welcome to It's Your Voice. I'm your host, Anita DeFrancesco, and our topic today is armoring of the body's natural, emotional, and sexual expression. And that is a topic that involves the trauma of the body and how to reduce that and live in what we call freedom of your full expression. This podcast was born out of the title, It's Your Voice, the DonnaGentiliStory.com. It is a book I wrote about a girl who was murdered and silenced, and you can find that book on Amazon.com. But the podcast is also dedicated to all the voiceless women of the world. May your voice be heard. So today I'm going to just make this brief and get through it. As children, we're forced to suppress our core basic biological impulses and emotions, which are known as our essences. And this can result in chronic muscular rigidity impulses and get suppressed. And the emotions are generally forced to unconsciously contract certain muscular parts of the body and inhibit one's breath. Now, when that happens, the impulses are suppressed and the emotions are forced, and the unconscious muscle contractions become inhibited along with the breathing. Years ago, environmentally, in most societies in history, people were chronically armored. And the world we live in today is a planet of people out of contact with the basic essential nature. We're out of contact with basic essential nature. And this is why it is important to work and clarify the emotions, work spiritually and emotionally. With all of that being said, that brings us to Dr. Wilhelm Reich, who is the founder of Reichian orgone energy therapy. He was a medical doctor and a major contributor to body-mind sciences, and he developed what we call this orgone energy somatic therapy, which I do that kind of work, and it's about working with the armor and the split, reducing the hidden trauma, dormant trauma that sits in the body and reinforces you to be unexpressive. It actually works in reverse of your natural body's impulses. If you're fully armored, a lot of us have some armor. But getting back to Dr. Wilhelm Reich, who was the inventor of the orgone energy therapies, he coined the term character armor. He also coined the term the sexual revolution. Now, his goal was to have a liberation of the biophysical. And he was around in the 1950s. So this was kind of a taboo because a liberation of the biophysical, and his book called The Orgasm was all about opening up the body's full energy. So when you open the body's full energy, part of that energy is your sexual energy. It's the chi. It's nothing more than the chi. The kundalini energy in the lower tailbone of the body needs to be opened and expressed for one to fully feel a sense of liberation, a sense of opening up, letting go of the resistances, the limitations. Armoring is bound energy, and it forms in the body in the way of the muscular contractions. So we have the Y-gyre of the body, which is the connective tissue, which is the youthful tissue in the body that mediates the aging process. So once this connective tissue, as long as we keep it fluid and healthy and movable, we can have this mediation going on in the body, because the connective tissue can get old and you can be a young person in age, in your numbers. So it all has to do with the body. That is where your psychology is and your brain within your body. There are character armoring attitudes, and this is what Wilhelm Reich talks about, which they develop a block against the body's natural breakthrough of emotions and organ sensations, causing anxiety, deflection, defensiveness, denial type of character. The fixation of the movement keeps the body in the sympathetic nervous system. So we want to be somewhere, have a balance between the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. Now, Dr. Wilhelm Reich, who was a medical doctor, he talked about two most fundamental types of armoring. One is neurotic and one is general. Now, the neurotic comes from, say, a child cannot express, or children, they're not allowed to express what they're feeling. If something is pleasurable or something feels great. So they grow up in this pattern, in this locked part of their body, which turns into armor, not being able to express a sigh of pleasure. And a lot of it has to do with shame, not having the voice. Now there's the genital, fundamental type that he talks about, where the anger is suppressed from a young age, where children say aren't accepted or they're dismissed or someone puts a lid on their expression or is constantly belittling them. And this type of a person would long for affection, would long for the lover, and they could almost become a sex addict at some point in their life, depending on the degree of the armor and the frozenness and the different types of whatever they were exposed to, and the transference. So there's a lot of transference that we pick up from our parents. Now, Reich says that the suppression of sexuality is fundamental in armor, which develops emotional illness. Now, have you ever heard of that, emotional illness? A lot of people think of illness as a disease, but your emotions are, when they are ill, that is a disease, and that causes disease in the body, medical diseases in the body. Fear inhibition can cause armor. So the more fear we have, the more scared little child that we are, and the more of ourselves that we can't become or be, this would cause armor. And there's different levels of armoring, of course. There's massive, there's soft armoring, but longing for this love and sadness are the core emotions that need to be healed, that need to be nourished. Otherwise, we are met with violence and hostility in the world. And that's not a good place to be, meeting those people that could hurt us even more. We're just looking to heal, right? So again, coming back that the children are forced to suppress these basic core emotions. And this is not the place where you want to be. So it's up to the parents, but a lot of times the parents have so much transference and have so much pain on their own that they're unable to really help in this way, because our world is just tapping into emotional health. We are ancient history there. Like I said, back in societies, in historical times, people were chronically armored. We have come a long way, physically and intellectually, emotionally, but we still have a long way to go when it comes to emotions. Now, Dr. Wilhelm Reich talked about what we call the segmental armoring theory, and there's a couple different types. You have the schizoid body type, which that person would stand tall and look. When you look at them, it's almost like you're looking at a wall. They're disconnected from their body, and that schizoid type could have been the unwanted child, needing to be wanted and accepted. Let's take a breath. We're listening to It's Your Voice. I'm your host, Anita DeFrancesco. Let's talk about the next segmental armoring theory here, which is called the oral type, the needy child. This is the codependent, where they walk with their head down, shoulders forward. Generally, codependents attract codependents, but you can break away from that if you know, once you heal yourself and once you start really dealing with the split and the armor and working to recreate yourself, you can attract people that aren't exactly what you are, because you'll be able to see it then. You'll have a lot more integrity, authenticity. Now, the oral type, the child had problems or issues going from dependence to independence. And there was some abandonment and deprivation there. So I'll leave it at that for oral. Now let's go to masochist, which is the endurer, the self-inflicting pain, because the parents totally control the child, that they turn inward and they harm themselves. The child is to separate from the parents, and the parents are in control. And so this type of child may have, or adult, masochistic, and usually the masochistic has sort of their hips are a little bit wide and their chest is puffed out. And now going to what we call the psychopathic, the controller, where they have self-esteem issues. This person creates the false self. Now, there's a lot of psychopaths out there, so you'll notice them. They're coping with rejection of their own nature. They're fighting their body's own nature. Oh, it's terrible. And we need to get to these people, because a lot of these people are brilliant. Now, there's the full-on end psychopath, or people that just have elements of it. The parent put them down, perhaps, or belittled them, or condescended them, and judged them. And they were not good enough, or they were too good. They were too much, or not good enough. And they're sensitive to criticism. There's a lot of people like that out there. So, basically, what we're talking about is armoring of the body's natural and emotional sexual expression. This is episode number 5. It's Your Voice. We're on It's Your Voice here. And one of the things that I'm going to leave you with is that Dr. Wilhelm Reich says orgasm is only as connected as the degree of your breath. It's only as connected as the degree of your breath. So we have this split, and this armor is there. Now, some are more split than others. But once we start to recreate and bring back the split, you will find that you will have a wholesomeness about you. You will become a new person. So what does armoring do? It reduces creating capacity and natural expression of uniqueness. We all have our own uniqueness that we need to honor, and we need to live that. So I'll leave you with that on this topic. I work as a Reichian, Dr. Wilhelm Reich Orgasm Energy body psychotherapist. If you're interested in my work, please reach out to me. You've been listening to It's Your Voice, a podcast by Anita DeFrancesco. This was born out of the DonnaGentiliStory.com, so you can get that book if you'd like to find out where the It's Your Voice was born from. Thank you for tuning in.